Assalamualaikum to Miss Eleni and our fellow friends. My name is Ismail Ismarizal, and today I will be presenting a financial statement of Bursa Saham Malaysia Company. And here are my table of content. I'm going to present you the company background, calculate and compare, future value, and present value. As for the company background, the company that I chose are Mr. DIY and IKEA. Mr. DIY was founded by Tan Yuye in 2005, and currently there are around 819 stores in Malaysia. The headquarters is in Selangor, and this company was Malaysia-based home improvement retailer, and the company provides home improvement product for do-it-yourself. It stands for DIY through online or offline store. Next, IKEA was founded in Sweden 1943 by Ingvar Kamprad and funded by Inca Foundation. The company goals are to create a better everyday life for as many people as possible around the world. And product and services that being provided by IKEA are like furniture and homeware, smart home, and furniture rental. And currently, there are like 455 IKEA stores worldwide, including Malaysia. For our first calculation, we'll be calculate liquidity ratio. In liquidity ratio, we have cash ratio, quick ratio, and current ratio. So, to find current ratio, you need to divide total asset and total liabilities. As you can see here, the current ratio for Mr. DIY are 1.74. After dividing current asset and current liabilities, the current ratio for Mr. DIY are 1.74. While for IKEA, after divided the current asset and current liabilities of IKEA, 9,162 divided with 5,265, the current ratio are 1.74. While for the quick ratio, the formula is quick ratio. To find quick ratio, current asset need to be minus with inventory and then divided with liabilities. As you can see here, the quick ratio for Mr. DIY are 0.42, while for the IKEA are 1.04. Next, to find the cash ratio, you need to find cash and cash equivalent and then divide it with current liabilities. For Mr. DIY, the cash ratio is 0.12, while for the IKEA, the cash ratio are 0.04. Okay, next for the second calculation will be the solvency ratio. Solvency ratio have two. There are debt to equity and debt to total capital. To find debt to equity, you need to divide total liabilities and total shareholder equity. So as you can see here, for Mr. DIY, the debt to equity for the company is 1.57, while for IKEA, the debt to equity is 2.21. Okay, for the debt to total capital, you need to divide debt with debt plus shareholder equity. Okay, for the Mr. DIY, debt to total capital for the company is 0.38, while for IKEA 1.67. Okay, next for the next calculation, we'll be going to calculate profitability ratio. In profitability ratio, we're going to calculate gross profit margin, operating profit margin, net profit margin, return on asset, and return on equity. To find gross profit margin, revenue need to be minus with cost of goods sold and then we divide it with revenue. Okay, for Mr. DIY, gross profit margin that they gain is 0.43, while for IKEA, the gross profit margin that they gain is 0.01. For operating profit margin, if we're going to find operating profit margin, you need to divide the operating income and revenue. For Mr. DIY, operating profit margin that they gain is 0.44, while from IKEA, the operating profit margin that they gain is 0.08. Next, net profit margin. To find net profit margin, you need to minus revenue and cost. Revenue minus cost, and then need to divide it with revenue. So, with Mr. DIY, the net profit margin that they gain is 0.43, while for IKEA, 0.01. Next, return on asset. Okay, the formula for return on asset is net income divided by total asset. The answer for Mr. DIY, the return on asset that they gain is 1.71. While for return on asset, IKEA gained 0.15. And lastly, return on equity. If we're going to find the return on equity, you need to divide net income and shareholder equity. So for Mr. DIY, they gain 1.30, while for IKEA, they gain 0.18. Okay, for the next calculation, we're going to calculate efficiency ratio. For efficiency ratio, we have 4 types of calculation. Inventory turnover, average collection period, receivable turnover, and total assets turnover. Okay, for Mr. DIY, to find inventory turnover, you need to divide cost of goods sold and average inventory. For Mr. DIY, the company gained 3.23, while for IKEA, they gained 5.62. For average collection period, to calculate them, you need to 365 days times with average account receivable divided with net credit sales. So for Mr. DIY, they gain 765.51, while for IKEA, 1050.93. For receivable turnover, the formula is net credit sales divided with average account receivable. So Mr. DIY received 0.47, while for IKEA, they gain 0.35. And lastly, for total assets turnover, you need to divide the net sales and average total asset. To find average total asset, you need to add total asset from current year and total asset from previous year and divide it into 2. So you will get average total asset. So for Mr. DIY, the total asset turnover that they gain is 0.19, or for IKEA 0.16. Okay, now for calculate the fund analysis, you need to find net profit divided by sales times sales divided by total assets and times total asset divided by total equity. To find net profit, you need to find total revenue and total expenses, and then you need to minus it. For Mr. DIY, the two-point analysis that they gain is 1.09, while for IKEA is 4.22. Next, we'll be moving to future value. We're going to calculate future value of ordinary annuity. Next, we're going to calculate the future value of ordinary annuity. As you can see here are the formula for the calculation involving cash, years, and interest rate. So, to find cash, you need to times it with 80%. So for Mr. DIY, the cash that they're going to use in future value ordinary annuity is 51,818.4. So the future value of ordinary annuity that they gain is 27,463.75. Well, for IKEA, the future value of ordinary annuity that they gain is 88,616,000. And now to calculate the future value of annuity due, and here are the formula. It's a little bit similar with the ordinary annuity, but they put a little bit changes. They use the same cash, the same interest rates, and the same times. So for Mr. DIY, for future value of annuity due that they gain is 1,298,486.20, while for IKEA 4,189,764,488 and 80. Next, we're going to calculate present value, and for this time, both company invest matured after 6 months with the interest of 5%. So these are the calculation, and these are the formula. As you can see here at the center are the formula. And for Mr. DIY, the present value for Mr. DIY that Mr. DIY gain is 230,333.84, while for IKEA 780,364,200. For the next present value, they make a little bit change with interest rate, and just now it's 5%, and now they up it into 15%. The calculation are still the same as the first one, as the previous present value. They just change interest rate, and as you can see here at the center are the formula for present value. And for Mr. DIY, present value that they gain is 197,097.76, while for IKEA they gain 63,596,910. Okay, thank you for listening to my presentation. I'm deeply sorry if I make any mistake, if I make any mistake in my pronunciation that make it harder to understand. I'm deeply sorry, and thank you for listening, and see you.